All right, welcome. Happy Friday. So glad you're with us on this Friday. Cold and rainy, but that's okay. Coffee with the Principal. This is Kyle Hunsberger, principal of Katherine Johnson STEM Academy. So glad that you are with us today. Let's jump right in. Just as a reminder, you have joined the meeting muted. Feel free to use the chat box as needed. We are recording this meeting. While we encourage you to leave your video on, you certainly don't have to. It better simulates an in-person meeting. You certainly don't have to leave your video on. Feel free to use the raise hand feature in Zoom during the Q&A when we get to the end. When you're called on, please unmute yourself and ask your question. We are recording these so that families who aren't able to join live are able to do so. We encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel where we post our coffees with the principal at youtube.com/@KJ Academy. You got to include the @ sign there, but that's us, and you can subscribe and get notified when we post new content. Okay. So today, in today's Coffee with the Principal, we are going to be going over the second module in our 4-part series, Substance Use Awareness and Resiliency Building. This is a 4-part series that LA Unified has developed for parents and for caregivers. We did a module last Friday together. It was very good. We got a lot of great feedback from families, not only who watched it live together in the morning, but who watched it later on YouTube. So thank you for joining us, for being here for part 2 of this. So the theme for today is going to be, why do youth use drugs and alcohol? Again, why do youth use drugs and alcohol? Again, we're glad you're here, and we want to start off by thanking you. Throughout this module, you're going to hear the term parents and caregivers used interchangeably to refer to all caregivers, which includes biological parents, adoptive parents, legal guardians, foster caretakers, and relative caregivers. We know you're here because you care deeply about the well-being of a child in your life or children in your life, and we welcome you, and we value your participation. I also want to acknowledge that some of the topics I'm addressing today could be triggering. If any point in the presentation you feel overwhelmed, just do what you need to do to help regulate your nervous system. Could be taking deep breaths, could be drinking a cool glass of water, a warm cup of tea, could be coffee, could be stretching, could be moving your body, whatever helps you remain calm and present. And then lastly, know that we here at Katherine Johnson STEM Academy are here as your allies in this work. This is not easy work, but we are here as your allies. Our approach is centered in a power with dynamic, so we want to partner with you in this work. We see you as the expert of your children, and I've said this many times before, I'm always thankful when families choose to send their children to Katherine Johnson STEM Academy. It's a real blessing and a privilege to be able to support them and to support you in your child's well-being. Like I said before, my name is Kyle Hunsberger. I'm the principal here at Katherine Johnson STEM Academy. I've been the principal since we opened up this school 6 years ago. Wow, that's phenomenal. And I love it. Love every minute of it. All right, so like I said, today is the second module in a 4-part series on substance use awareness. Last week, the topic was substance use awareness. It provided an overall picture of some of the substances our youth nationwide are using. And so it's important to know those, to be aware of those, and to do that. So we talked about alcohol, we talked about marijuana, we talked about vaping, and we also talked about over-the-counter or prescription medication. So today's content will be on Module 2, Why Do Kids Use? One thing I want to point out is we're creating a playlist on our YouTube page of literally just these topics, or these four what do you call it, presentations. So if you want to, if you want to get the specific playlist, it is right there, bit.ly/KJSA substance use. And if you bookmark that, that'll be just the playlist of all 4 of these. Next week, it'll be how to talk to your child about drugs. And that one, we're privileged to have that one facilitated by our science and STEM teacher, Miss Lori Dunklin. She'll be facilitating that one next week on March 17th. And then we'll wrap it up March 24th with building resilience in our children. Right. So today's training addresses one of the priorities outlined in LAUSD's strategic plan under Pillar 2, Joy and Wellness. It's a priority of the district to create and deliver workshops like these that are focused on deepening parent and caregiver knowledge, skills, and dispositions to support their child's social and emotional needs. Today's learning outcomes, what we're trying to finish during this presentation is really 3 things. Number 1, to learn about substance use and to go over common misperceptions. Number 2, explore the relationship between risk and protective factors regarding substance use. And number 3, to recognize signs that your child may need help. Those 3 are our goals for today. So, prevention is something that happens at every age. As a parent, you are the biggest influence in your child's life. Having open and honest conversations is one of the most powerful ways to connect with our children and to help them make healthy choices. When addressing challenging topics like drugs and alcohol use, those are not the only challenging topics as a parent, but when addressing challenging topics like drug and alcohol use, it's not about having a one-time drug talk, but really tackling the subject through frequent organic conversations that evolve differently as your child gets older. The conversation you have with your 6-year-old child is going to be different than the conversation you have with that same child when they're 9 or when they're 12 or when they're 15 or 17. From a young age, parents, you can begin to set clear expectations, rules, and messages for your children. Today, we're going to discuss reasons why youth might be drawn to drugs and alcohol. We're going to address common misconceptions about teen substance use, and we're going to explore risk factors and protective factors. Lastly, we'll review signs that might indicate that your child needs support, and we're going to share with you some community resources. So again, thinking about the dangers of substance use can feel overwhelming and scary as a parent or caregiver. And so I want you to just think for a moment and reflect on the questions. What supportive and nurturing relationships do you have in your life as a parent to reach out to when you're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, or overloaded? Just think about for that second. I'm going to pause. Yeah, it's an important question. As adults, having social supports in our lives makes a huge impact, not on our own lives, but what guidance we're able to provide to our children. There's a tremendous amount of research about the benefits of these social supports in managing stress. Being connected to others means you have opportunities for practical problem solving when faced with overwhelming challenges. This is true of our children's lives. This is true for our lives in general as well. There are many reasons why young people use or try substances. In some cases, it can be as simple as being offered a drink or vape and being curious, but usually there's more. Understanding why some teens or preteens drink or use substances is a valuable step towards keeping our children healthy and safe. Any use by children and teens is a concern. It is not normal behavior. Any drug or alcohol use by teenagers is considered drug abuse because these substances interfere with normal brain development. Let me say that again. It is not just that drug use or drug or alcohol use by teens is abuse, not simply because it may be illegal, but also because, and even more importantly, because these substances interfere with normal brain development. The impact on brain development can increase the risk of cognitive, behavioral, and emotional problems later in life. The young brain is at a much higher risk of developing dependence and addiction of substances. So I want to address some common misperceptions. Common misperception number one is that every teen experiments. This common misperception is why some parents actually allow their children to engage in underage drinking or excuse teen drug use. This approach stands in the way of finding the root causes of teen substance abuse, allowing the issue to develop further. Studies have shown that when teens realize that not as many of their peers engage in substance use as they thought, they are less likely to use too. So one important tip that is important for families is to get to know your child's friends and their child's friends as parents. Talk with those parents about their approach to supervision and their stance on substance abuse. This is, a really, really important thing. It's not just you knowing your kid, it's knowing who is your child's friends with. Who are their parents? Are they, particularly, especially when they're hanging out outside of school? Are there, sleepovers that's happening? Are there play dates? I don't know if we still call them play dates when you're in middle school, but are they hanging out together? And who are your child's friends' parents? What's their stance on these issues? Common misperception number two is that sometimes adults think that it's just a phase that they'll grow out of it. However, assuming that your teen's drug or alcohol use is just a phase and they'll grow out of it is a really dangerous gamble. It might be true, or they may end up down a dangerous path of addiction that can be difficult to recover from. Waiting to see what happens is a risk that just is not worth it. Kids and preteens are uniquely susceptible to the addiction compared with adults, and the potential damage to their development and health is real. In other words, don't provide substances and don't turn a blind eye. Common misperception number three is that they're only using or acting out for attention. Teen substance use often has an underlying cause. Brushing off their harmful habits as just attention-seeking behavior ignores the fact that your child may be in need. Teens, preteens often use or abuse to fit in. They think that everyone else is doing it, which is false. Belonging is a strong motivational need, particularly in adolescence. Feelings of being an outsider and longing to be included and liked by others can lead to succumbing to peer pressure, not just with drugs or alcohol use and abuse, but with other things as well. If the kids that a child wants to be friends with or is hanging out with are drinking or using substances, they may feel the need to participate as well or risk being left out. Some teens see substance use as an easy path to making friends, fitting in, or being accepted. Adolescents and preteens are susceptible to peer influence in that it has been observed that they are more likely to engage in risk-taking behavior in groups rather than alone. Multiple studies support the notion that the influence of friends is highly predictive of whether or not an adolescent will engage in substance use. Influence of friends could either promote or deter risky behavior. Some folks may have heard, the following metaphor, and I think it's a metaphor. And that is, you become like the 5 people you hang out with the most. And so I don't know whether there's data on that, but it certainly gets at the heart of what there is data about, and that is that adolescents and preteens are very susceptible to peer influence, particularly when it comes to risk-taking behavior. Some teens or preteens use drugs and alcohol to overcome insecurities, let their guard down, and feel socially confident. Substance use may make them feel like they are really open and connecting with others. So, what can you do as a parent or a caregiver? Please talk about your child's need for acceptance and to fit in. That's normal. Needing to feel accepted, needing to feel like they belong, needing to fit in. That is a normal thing. Trying to solve that problem through substance use and abuse is not. Explain to your child that real friends will give them space to be themselves and won't make them do anything that they are uncomfortable with. Some adolescents may turn to certain drugs like illegal or prescription stimulants because they think those substances might enhance or improve their performance. What can you do about this is you can brainstorm together with your child to identify healthy ways to manage the stress in their life. So more sleep is always a good way. Getting outdoors is a great way. One-on-one time is a great way. It's not on here, but I'll say putting down the cell phone, getting off of social media for periods of time is a great way. Let your child offer suggestions and help them think through their ideas. Additionally, some teens and preteens use substances to relieve emotional distress caused by stress, trauma, and/or problems. Loneliness, low self-esteem, depression, anxiety disorder, and other mental health issues are commonly associated with teen substance abuse. The presence of mental health issues might contribute to the development or exacerbation of substance use. What can you do as a parent? If your child is suffering, reassure them that you'll seek out appropriate professional help, and also that it is important that you do just that. Parents should take early substance use by their child very seriously. This is especially critical if there are mental health, behavioral, or environmental stressors present. Here at Katherine Johnson STEM Academy, we have a whole support team to help kids with the stresses and the traumas and the issues that they have. Ms. Tracy is an excellent PSW. Ms. Guth is an excellent counselor. And a lot of the other adults who work here at the school, in addition to teachers, are people that kids can turn to, and they can share what's going on in their lives. When I meet with kids, in my office, one of the questions I always ask our students is, who are the adults here you feel like you could go to if you have issues or challenges? And, I'll wait until they name some people, and they always do. They always name some specific, adults here on campus that they feel comfortable sharing with and talking to. And those people are there to help. So next, we're going to talk about risk and protective factors. Most people have heard the phrase risk factors. Not a whole lot of people have heard the phrase protective factors. So we're going to talk about those and how they're very different than each other. So many factors influence a person's chance of developing a mental and/or substance use issue. Prevention focuses on reducing risk factors and strengthening protective factors. So risk factors are things that you are probably already familiar with. Risk factors are things that make youth vulnerable to substance use or other risky behavior. These are things, for example, like adverse childhood experiences. Sometimes they're called ACEs. Things like toxic stress, things that like mental health issues that are unaddressed or undiagnosed. If there's a family history of substance use, if parents have favorable attitudes towards the risky behavior, that can be a risk factor. A lack of supervision is a risk factor. A family rejection of sexual orientation or gender identity, that can be a risk factor. Association, substance using peers, a lack of school connectedness, low academic achievement. Those can be risk factors. Most families are very, very familiar with them. I'm going to talk about one of them in particular, and that is our ACEs. I mentioned those at the beginning. ACEs stand for Adverse Childhood Experiences. Adverse childhood experiences are stressful situations that occur in the life of a child or adolescent. They stand for Adverse Childhood Experiences, or ACEs. These experiences can include things like physical and emotional abuse, neglect, caregiver mental illness, and household violence. Here's the thing that the research says. Research tells us that about 1 of every 4 children, that's 25% of our kids, 1 out of every 4 children will experience a traumatic event in their lives before the age of 16. Here's the other thing that the research says about ACEs. The more ACEs a child experiences, the more likely he or she is to suffer from health issues, poor academic achievement, and substance use issues later in life. According to Project No, the more adverse childhood experiences a child is exposed to, the more likely it is that they will begin drug use at an earlier age and develop a substance use problem. Trauma increases the risk of developing substance abuse, and substance abuse increases the likelihood that adolescents will experience trauma. It is a vicious cycle. Experiencing many ACEs, as well as things like racism and community violence without supportive adults, can cause what is known as toxic stress. This excessive activation of the stress response system can lead to long-lasting wear and tear on the body and on the brain. The effect is similar to revving a car engine for days or weeks at a time. Exposure to traumatic stress in childhood primes the brain to be sensitive to stress and seek relief from it through life. Those last 4 or 5 slides were really dark, but it's important to know that is a reality for kids, for families. But I'm going to turn it right now and say that there is definitely good news. And that is this, that just like risk factors, there are what are called protective factors. And the good news is that the presence of protective factors can lessen the impact of risk factors. And not all youth who have risk factors will develop substance abuse problems. So let me say that again. Good news is that the presence of protective factors can lessen the impact of risk factors, and not all youth who have risk factors will develop substance abuse problems. Multiple children may have the same incident, yet experience different reactions. Not every child who experiences a traumatic event will develop symptoms of childhood traumatic stress. Whether or not your child does depend on a range of factors. Responsive relationships between children and their caregivers and parents can help buffer a child from the effects of toxic stress. Protective factors include a child's individual attributes, including their strengths, their problem-solving skills, their healthy coping skills, their ability to self-regulate, their pro-social skills, their ability to make friends, having a sense of hope. Protective factors in a child's environment include having healthy peer groups, having school engagement, having a connection to community, having supportive caregiver and family relationships, positive parent-child communication, and parent involvement. All research points to strong parent-caregiver relationships as the strongest protective factor against substance use. Research shows that teens are less likely to drink, smoke, or to use drugs when they feel their parents are actively involved in their lives. When you parents, when you talk with your children early and often about alcohol and other drugs, they can protect their children from many of the high-risk behaviors associated with these drugs. When you parents talk with your children about drugs, you can protect your children from the high-risk behaviors associated with those drugs. You have agency families, so please talk with your children early and often about alcohol and other drugs. You are protecting them from the high-risk behaviors associated with those drugs. Here's where your kids really need you. They really need you. And that's because the young brain is definitely still under construction. This is actually why I chose to work in a middle school 19 years ago, and I've been working in middle school my whole career, is because working with our young people, while their brains are under construction provides the opportunity to really make a profound positive impact on the lives of others. But the impact that I have, the impact that our teachers have is important, but it pales into comparison to the impact that you have on your child. Their brain is still under construction, and it definitely needs you. The prefrontal cortex, or the thinking brain, is not fully developed until the age of 25. The prefrontal cortex is the part of the human brain where rational and logical thinking occurs. Young brains lack the executive functioning skills to think reflectively about their values, their future state, or consequences. Additionally, and this is important to know, the adolescent brain and the pre-adolescent brain has particularly unique thirst for this hormone called dopamine. You may have heard of dopamine before. Dopamine gets released at an extra level during the teenage years when kids engage in risky behaviors like driving, action sports, substance use, or generally anything parents worry about. So what does this imply for parents and supportive adults? So a couple of things. It means that we need to be their prefrontal cortex for a while longer. We need to help them make smart and healthy choices. Parents, you can do this by setting limits and clear expectations for your child, for your preteen. You can do this by helping teens weigh consequences of decisions, and you can do this by teaching kids ways to manage their emotions. That's something that we do here at Katherine Johnson STEM Academy, but hearing it from you reinforces that and supports that really deeply. The role that you play as parents is powerful. Parents have a major impact on your child's decision not to use tobacco, alcohol, and drugs. Prevention starts when you start talking with and listening to your child. Help your child make good choices and good friends. Teach your child different ways to say no. There's no guarantee that your child will not use drugs, but drug use is much less likely to happen if you provide guidance and clear rules about not using drugs, if you spend time with your child, remaining responsive to their needs, if you monitor your child and provide supervision, and you monitor the behavior you want to see by not using drugs yourself. How we use our power in this role is going to make all the difference. And how you use your power in your role as a parent will really define your relationship with your child. Parent-child relationships that are based on what's called a power over dynamic, those relationships tend to stop communication before it can even begin. It's a one-sided relationship where the parent is the only one with a say or a voice that matters. It disconnects us from our children. The type of approach may give us temporary compliance from our children because it's fear-based. A better strategy is something called a power with dynamic. And that's a strategy that creates a space where each person, the child and the parent, feels like they matter. It favors communication over force. It establishes a foundation for creating loving, just, respectful caregiver-child relationships in the moment and in the future. And power with opens up the possibility of both sides, the parent and the child, being influenced and changed by the other. The power with approach can feel contradictory to the parent role, and some may worry that their child will see them as a friend rather than as a parent. But we can assure you that you can't be your child's friend even if you tried. The power with approach strengthens relationships and connections that are the key to creating safety. This approach will make it possible for your child to come to you if they have questions or are in trouble without fear of being shut down. Parenting style is a very important factor influencing the development of adolescents and their use of substances. So there are many messages we need to receive during childhood from our parents and caregivers because they have a significant impact on the way that we see ourselves and relate to others. These are powerful statements that we can embrace and share with our children. So I'm going to pause for a minute and just allow you to think silently about this question. Don't need to put it in the chat, don't need to write it down, but just think silently. What are some of the messages do your children need to hear from you to feel safe and loved? What messages do your children need to hear from you to feel safe and loved? So maybe you thought something like, I love you. Maybe what your child needs to hear is, I see you and I hear you. Maybe your child needs to hear, I will take care of you. Maybe your child needs to hear, I have confidence in you. I am sure you will succeed. Things like that. So think about those messages that you're sending to your child. Last portion of this. How do we recognize signs that children may be in need of support? How do you as a parent recognize signs that your child may be in need of support? There are many signs that could indicate a young person is using drugs, though it can be difficult to tell the difference between normal adolescent behavior and actual drug use. Caregivers are usually the first to notice if their child is having a tough time. If drug use is suspected, it is up to you as a caring adult in a young person's life to initiate a conversation and seek support. So we went over this last week, but we'll go over it again. Some of the common signs of substance use in youth might be as follows: secretive behavior, missing curfews, paranoia over small inconveniences, uncharacteristically relaxed or reserved, unfazed by conflicts or stress, avoiding eye contact, slurred and slow speech, loss of interest in activities, shifts in friendships where kids might lose longtime friends, unusual tiredness, things like that. Additionally, it can affect kids' physical appearance, poor hygiene, diminished personal appearance, smell of smoke on clothes or belongings, dry bloodshot eyes, pupils larger or smaller than normal, being extremely tired or extremely hyperactive, cold, sweaty palms or shaking hands. Here at school, kids may have diminished ability to focus and engage with assignments. It might affect their attendance. Kids might have changes in academic performance and a sudden disregard for the rules. Pay attention, families, to what's going on in your child's life and note any concerning changes. We respond quickly to warning signs. Being aware of the signs associated with drug and alcohol abuse is an effective way to prevent continued drug abuse. When you're familiar with these signs and symptoms, you can take action right away. Watching for social changes, changes in friend groups, and other warning signs can be a key to effective intervention. So, could your child benefit from individual or family therapy? After a critical incident or stressor, children need the attention and care their parents and caregivers can provide. Seeking professional help can also be beneficial. Counseling services support resilience by providing tools to cope, reminding our children that they are not alone, helping identify language to describe their feelings, and sharing with trusting adults. Early identification and care can help young people to recover more quickly, benefit from their education, and develop positive relationships. All these benefits help reduce the risk of future substance abuse. It might be difficult to know where to start when reaching out for help. Here are a few prompts that you might use to explain your concerns. You could say, hey, I heard my child say something, something, something. My child is feeling something, something, something. I've seen a change in my child's behavior, mood, appearance. This is not my usual child's behavior. I think there's a problem because my child is feeling blank, fill in the blank. These are great ways and great tools that you can use to have a conversation with a professional, another trusted adult, someone here at the school, people in your community who are committed to benefiting and serving the needs of children. I want to also share with you as we start to bring this to a close, some of the resources that are available to you as families regarding substance use and abuse. If you have concerns or have any questions, we encourage you to contact a mental health professional to get more information about how you can help your child. There's a whole list right here. And again, I want to say thank you. I'm sorry, another resource hotline is available through LA Unified. During the school day on weekdays, 213-241-3840 is their phone number, and it'll connect you with a human being at Student Health and Human Services. Additionally, there is a self-referral at shhs.lusd.net, and you can share what you've noticed, how to get more support for your child there. Now I want to say thank you so much for joining us. We just concluded our second module, Why Do Kids Use? It will be posted on YouTube later this afternoon. And then the last part is this. We would appreciate it if you're willing to give us some feedback, or actually give the district feedback on this particular module, bit.ly/SUA-module2. It is case sensitive, so if you take a moment and leave your feedback there, that will be very, very helpful for folks who are designing these for schools, who've provided them to principals to share as we continue to partner together as families to help our young people make the most healthy choices they possibly can. So with that said, I am going to stop the screen sharing and see if there are any questions that folks have at this time about this or about anything. All right. Well, I want to say thank you again for joining me. It was a pleasure to meet with you every Friday. We'll see you next week for part 3 of this. Ms. Dunklin will be leading it, and then I'll conclude with part 4 the following week after that. When we come back in mid-April, we don't have school on the 31st because it's Cesar Chavez Day, and we don't have school on April 7th because it's the last Friday in spring break. But coming back on the on the 14th is the first Friday in April we're back. We've got another special presentation that day for families during April. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay dry, please, and we'll see everyone on Monday. Bye-bye.